So hello, everybody. Welcome to Open Classroom. I'm Janet Gilla, the Director of Professional Development for the Brown School here at Washington University. For those of you joining us on the Zoom webinar, as we've been trying to share, chat feature is enabled. While we cannot see or hear our audience, we very much want to include you in this conversation. So please do continue to introduce yourself, share questions and comments as we go today. Here at Open Classroom, we're in for a very busy week, and we like that. We have programs tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we'll be back tomorrow, that's Tuesday, with Dr. Sharon Robbins, who's going to be joining us talking about use of DBT with people with intellectual disabilities. On Wednesday, March 30th, we have an amazing panel of leaders from several sectors talking about leveraging the collective, a commitment to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in our communities. And then capping out the week on Thursday, March the 31st, it's Transgender Day of Visibility. We have another great panel specifically focused on supporting trans youth. So anything and everything that we do here at Open Classroom, you are welcome. We love it when you share our information with your friends and colleagues. We're grateful to have you with us today, and we hope you'll be coming back. But let me tell you a little bit about our speakers for today's program. Lisa Mulligan is Director of Program and Development at Girls on the Run here in St. Louis. She's passionate about prevention approaches, particularly related to the physical and mental health of young people. Native to St. Louis, Lisa's committed to working towards the health and well-being of girls here. She's a 2009 alum of the Brown School's MSW program. And she's joined by Dr. Heather Cameron, the Michael B. Kaufman Professor of Practice at the Brown School, co-founder of Girls in the Lead. As a social entrepreneur, Heather works around the world for girls' education and rights. She leads projects for refugee children in German cities, designs girls' primary school leadership programs in the townships of Cape Town, and runs workshops and creates curriculum tools for the Ministry of Education in Afghanistan. She also consults on social impact assessment strategies. So a wealth of expertise related to today's topics, and they're here to share practical applications regarding women and girls in sports leadership. Please welcome Lisa and Heather.
Thank you so much, Janet, and thank all of you for joining. I'm very excited to talk with Lisa today about Girls on the Run, one of the marquee programs here in our region, bringing physical activity to girls through a school program, and how that sort of fits into a wider understanding of what physical activity can do to contribute to community building. We have a busy plan for us today for this 1 hour. We're going to have a short introduction, including a bit about how I came to this work, and then Lisa will get into explaining some of the wonderful things that Girls on the Run is doing and planning to do and wanting to work with the wider community to achieve. The key part of our work today is an exchange with all of you about programs that you're currently doing, programs you'd like to do, ways to take some of the ideas out of our programs and put it into the work that you're doing at a girls and boys club, at an after school program. How can we do this more thoughtfully? How do we think about programs that girls need and that we don't kind of forget about girls when we say youth and some of these ideas? And then we'll conclude with a few next steps. But before we get into that, I'd love to ask some questions through a poll that we've got here on the online tool. So if I can ask Janet to put up the poll. So you have some questions and you're able to click on your answer, yes or no, basically. I'll just read them out for if anybody's on a phone. First question, have you worked in gender equity spaces or with organizations working on gender equality? Secondly, anybody using sports for development, for community development and gender goals? So again, how are you being purposeful about any of your sports or physical activity work? And then last question, how do people feel about sports spaces which are just for girls or just for boys? And I really encourage you to also put in the chat if you've got an opinion on one of these questions, or especially if you've got a program working, let us know if you're using sports for community development and gender equity. Maybe drop it in the chat and we can come back to that when we're in our discussion. Okay, so we've got about another few more people to, oh no, I think we're good. If we can end the poll, Janet, and just share back to everybody. Okay, so a good mix. I'm seeing sort of 63% yes, working on gender equity in different spaces. Number 2, using sports, only a third. So good, Lisa, we have the opportunity to explain to everybody how physical activity can be a big piece of youth development, community development. And then looks like we have a lot of people who agree that there is a role for girls' spaces. We're also understanding girls' spaces in a very wide sense, which Lisa will get into later. Okay, well, thank you very much for contributing to that. And again, let's just keep the chat going with your thoughts or comments or links as we go forward. Okay, so we can remove the poll, and then Maya, if you can take us forward. So sports, Janet generously explained some of the international work I'm doing, and sports is not just something we do for fun. This is not just something we do for relaxation or for health, but can actually contribute to many of the social goals that we have, whether that be fighting poverty, whether that be improving education, whether that be thinking about building strong institutions and peace building. All around the world, there are programs which are using sport and youth engagement to work on these issues, which are way beyond just sort of midnight basketball, and are directly attached to sustainable development goals. My background in this, I started off, Maya, if you want to advance our slides, as a boxing coach. So that's me with much blacker hair, about 20 years ago, where I started a neighborhood project in my neighborhood of Berlin, which was a working class, highly migrant district, where I wanted to do something about gender-based violence. And I thought, okay, I could do seminars, I could do coloring books, I could, work with the police. But instead I decided to create a sporting program, which again, using physical activity and sports and teamwork to achieve that end. And then after doing that work and seeing that as being recognized in Germany as this is a way of like contributing to community peace and contributing to, again, a stronger voice for girls, we were able to take that into South Africa, working with activists there, but then a more academic program. If we take a look at the next slide. Working with grade 5 girls, and I know Lisa and I will have the opportunity to talk about the importance of certain age groups. So working with young girls like these two here, who were not just doing boxing, but doing many different types of physical activity, but most important, doing like homework clubs and the like. And again, just like we saw with the Sustainable Development Goals towards equal education, creating sporting opportunities is often a way to keep children engaged in school so they can get the benefit of that education that's provided at least at primary levels in some low and middle income states. From that, we moved forward and realized that as I took the opportunity at WashU, I wasn't going to be able to be flying all over the world anymore. So after doing work in Afghanistan, doing work with a lot of Muslim kids and kids from different cultures, we decided that we needed to find a way to share that more widely. And so after doing this sort of work that was mentioned at the beginning, helping the Ministry of Education in Afghanistan develop sports programs for girls, helping other organizations, I realized, how do we actually learn together? So we created Girls in the Lead. And this is a way of bringing projects together to learn from one another. And Girls on the Run was one of my first partners that I recruited back before COVID times to learn from and to see all of the amazing work that they were doing around engaging girls. And so we brought together programs from 6 different countries, including the United States, and managed to grow an even bigger community. So if we look at our world map, we can see that we have the different hubs recognized by these little hearts, but also many different countries which are trying to think about how do I use sports? How do I do these sports activities that I'm maybe already doing as an organization and connect it to a bigger goal? So that's what Girls in the Lead does, is it brings practitioners together working on different problems, stuff that Lisa and I will be discussing today about inclusion, about access, about, what does quality mean in a project like this? How do we know what our impact is? But getting together and learning. So if that's something that others of you here on the call with us are interested in learning more about, I encourage you to take a look at the Girls in the Lead website, which we're going to put here in the chat. But that's a little bit of the background about how we have both this international look as well as a very local look. So I'm excited now to hand over to Lisa, who can explain a bit about how Girls in the Run works, what you guys are trying to achieve, what you've achieved so far. And then after this, we're going to move into a bit more discussion and questions. So you can put questions in the chat at any time, also comments. But we'll let Lisa sort of lay things out for about another 10 minutes, and then we're going to move into a bit more of an interaction. So, but questions as you like, or put them to the side. But we'll have an opportunity to think about what's actually happening here in our community in St. Louis, and how can we use physical activity to improve our communities, improve our schools, and definitely improve the lives of the girls who get to participate in such a great program. Lisa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cameron. It really is such a privilege to be here with all of you today. It's an honor. Like Janet said earlier, I am also a Brown School grad. I graduated in 2009. And so to be able to be back in this space, learning and connecting with all of you is really an honor. So thank you for having us. I also know there's a lot of ways you can spend this lunchtime hour, and your choice to be here today with us really matters. So thank you so much. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about Girls on the Run. As I'm seeing attendees come into the room, I'm recognizing a lot of the names coming in, which I'm so grateful that you're here. I really do hope that for those of you who are connected to Girls on the Run, that you share your experiences. It's really important that we hear from you today. And also for those of you who are not familiar with Girls on the Run, welcome. I'm excited to be able to connect with you as well. So please feel free to ask questions as we go. Before we dive into some of the content of Girls on the Run and who we are and what we do, Maya, if you could move to the next slide. In my vulnerability, I'm sharing this photo of myself with you. This is me at age 9 in all of my 9-year-old glory. I'm dating myself. I'm sure some of you can connect with my bow and my shirt. But before we dive into this content, what I want to ask of all of you is to just take a breath, maybe close your eyes if you're in a space where you can do that, and think back to when you were 9 years old. What mattered to you when you were 9? What were your thoughts, your hopes, your dreams? What did you care about? How did you feel about yourself when you were 9 years old? I'm asking this because Girls on the Run is a program that meets girls at a pivotal developmental period. So we as an organization serve girls typically in 3rd through 8th grades, and the lower end of that is about age 8 or 9. And Heather and I are going to talk quite a bit about why this age group is important and what matters about programming at this time period in a child's life. But what I want to share about this is what we are asking of girls and of our coaches, who I will also talk more about, is if you were 9, if you were me in that photo, or whatever that photo looks like for you, what would you say? What would you say to him, her, they? What would you say? What do you want them to know right now at age 9 that maybe you lose along the way of growing up? Because when you ask a group of 9-year-olds, there's all kinds of research that shows if you ask a group of 9-year-olds how they feel about themselves, particularly a group of 9-year-old girls, they're gonna say that they feel pretty good. They feel pretty good about who they are, what their body looks like, what they're capable of doing. But when you ask that same group of girls when they're 16 years old how they feel about themselves, those numbers get flipped on their head. So if the vast majority at 9 feel really good, the vast majority at 16 don't feel so good. And so by implementing this program in our community at such a pivotal time in a child's life, we have an opportunity to build skills that will prevent the 16-year-old from feeling like she's not good enough, that she's not capable enough, that she can't go accomplish the things that she really wants to accomplish. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Girls on the Run, but I just don't want you to forget that image of you as a 9-year-old. This is the impact that we can make. We can meet those 9-year-olds where they are, and we can provide them with something that really will hopefully change the way that they feel about themselves, and then therefore change the way they show up in our world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Girls on the Run. Maya, you can move the slide forward. And For those of you that are familiar, I've seen some folks in the chat say that they're a coach or maybe their daughter participated in the program. So for some of you, you're very familiar. We are a physical activity positive youth development program. I'm going to share a little bit more about what that means. But what I want to really say in the beginning of all of this is we are an after-school program, typically an after-school program. And our program is very well researched, well evidenced, it's structured, it's a curriculum that teaches girls more than just physical activity. So for many of you, you're probably familiar with the term social emotional learning. I feel like that has really grown over the last decade in what that means in our community. And so oftentimes folks think about social emotional learning as soft skills. It's not necessarily academic. It's not technical sports skills. It's really the skills related to how do you function as a member of a team? How are you able to identify your emotions and regulate them? How do you build relationships with others? How do you make an impact in your community? So social emotional learning is the component of Girls on the Run that many folks are not familiar with. So oftentimes people think of Girls on the Run and they think of our 5K, which is an amazing, incredible experience that I encourage you all to engage in. But we're so much more than a running program. And that's really important for me to be able to communicate with all of you, that we are taking a program, a curriculum that focuses on self-awareness, self-management, self-confidence, social awareness. And we are creatively integrating physical activity into that curriculum. So that looks like girls in a small group setting with trusted, trained, trauma-informed adults who are their coaches, leading them through a season where they are getting lessons about this really important content. And they are also participating in physical activity. So they are learning this content in a very structured environment, and they are also training to be able to complete a 5K at the end of the season. And so what we know is that when you combine, Maya, if you want to move to the next slide, that would be great. So what we know is that when we combine physical activity with social emotional learning, the outcomes for girls and therefore our community are greater than if you separate the two. So on the next slide, you'll see sort of this graph that explains that if you have a youth development program, there's a lot of really wonderful, solid youth development programs that impact a lot of the social emotional components that I was just talking about. And then there are also some really wonderful sports programs and leagues where children are able to participate and gain a lot of skills related to their physical activity. But when you combine the two, so sort of in that upper right quadrant, you get Girls on the Run, which is very unique. There are not a lot of programs in our community that combine physical activity and the positive youth development. And what we know is that when we combine those, the outcomes are greater than the sum of their parts. So we do that in partnership in our community. One of our biggest focuses at Girls on the Run is working in and with communities. We are always invited in. So what that looks like is working across our territory. Our geographic territory in St. Louis spans 23 counties in Missouri and Illinois. So we work in partnership with over 400 different schools and community organizations. And this is a GIS map of what our territory looks like. I want to shout out to all of our Brown School Practicum students who have helped us get to the place where we are able to really see the impact by utilizing tools such as GIS. But what we are doing is we are being invited into communities. We are working in collaboration with the stakeholders in that community. So what that looks like is partnering with school district leadership. I saw that we have Betsy here, who is from Jean Slay's Girls and Boys Club. We work in partnership with organization leaders who are serving our young people, and we go to them. Because what is so important to us as an organization is that we are meeting not only individual girls, but communities where they are. So we bring this evidenced curriculum, we train folks in the community, We empower them to deliver it in their space, and we support them every step of that process. And we are doing that locally. We're doing that in our 23 counties. We have really great saturation of our community, but we are always taking on new sites and new communities. And we are also we are part of a much larger movement. So this map here is showing us where all of the councils are across our country. So Girls on the Run Girls on the Run St. Louis is part of a larger organization of councils across our country and as well as in Canada. And we are serving girls in rural and urban and suburban and every type of community you can imagine. And so what we often say is what really matters is we have this really large movement of Girls on the Run programming across our country. But what really matters is what happens between the coach and the girl at practice. But when we ripple that out across the country in every type of community and space, what that looks like is a movement. That's a movement towards changing the way that we talk about girls and women. Part of a movement that changes the way that we tell girls that they can be and will be whatever they want to be, and that we will be there to support them. So this is a movement. We are doing this in St. Louis, but I want to just make sure that we're connecting it to the larger nationwide movement, because it is really important locally, but it is really important nationally. And as an organization in our local community, we are an independent 501c3 nonprofit. We are the second largest Girls on the Run council in the country, meaning that we serve thousands of girls every year. So we're serving about 6,000 girls a year. And as Heather and I get more into our dialogue back and forth, I really want to challenge all of you to think about what does that look like for you in our community? There are so many ways to connect in with Girls on the Run and other really important, wonderful youth serving organizations that are pushing this movement forward. And I'm really excited to hear from all of you and be able to answer some of your questions. So I'm actually going to pass it back over to Heather and Maya.
Great. Thank you, Lisa, for laying out some of the basics of your excellent project. We've seen you've got lots of fans here in the webinar, and we're very much looking forward to hearing about your experience as a coach, your experience as a facility, or again, I think we have a proud mom as well. I have a few questions that I wanted to discuss. And I know that we're collecting others in the chat, so please feel free to do that. We're going to maybe try a whiteboarding exercise later as well, just to pull out all the toys. But we were talking about the importance, and both of our projects start with the word girls. And the idea that we're very much focused on serving a specific part of the population. So, and again, this is something that a lot of people have seen the value in, as we've seen in our poll, that most people that we asked today say they see the need for those sorts of spaces. But there's also been a lot of debate, unfortunately, in this part of the country about, how do we include all sorts of different people. So could you maybe start off, Lisa, with a little bit about what's the reason that Girls on the Run is girls only? My boxing project was also girls only to start, and just to sort of articulate why it's not mixed, why it's not something where boys are also participating.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that question. And we do get that question quite a bit. And I always love the opportunity to be able to share more about that. What I do want to say first is that we use the word girls, but that is not sometimes that can also feel like we're not including all members of our community. And so our policy at Girls on the Run is very inclusive and open. And so we are reaching young people at a very young age. So, but as early as 8 or 9 years old, we have participants who are identifying as non-binary or non-gender conforming. And we are very inclusive and open to however that child identifies. If Girls on the Run is a space that feels like the right place for them, they are welcome. And so I want to be really clear about that, because as I talk a little bit about why girls only and what the research says, why girls only, it's really important to note that children who identify as non-binary or non-gender conforming are experiencing a whole host of challenges that girls who are identifying as girls are not experiencing. And so really the reason that we as an organization across the country, and why this organization was founded, this program was founded 25 years ago, was for girls only, is because the research tells us that it's necessary. And so as an organization, we will always follow the data. I know that I'm going to talk a little bit more about our impact data in a bit, but we are so committed to ensuring that our resources are being invested in a place that is going to make a positive impact. And girls are experiencing life very differently than boys are, even at as young as age 5. So when you look at topics such as self-esteem, body size satisfaction, capacity around just confidence and what they feel like they are able to engage in. All of the research will show that girls start to drop off in their confidence and their body size satisfaction, their feeling of belonging in a sports setting at a much younger age than boys do. There is research around girls as young as 5 and 6 years old having really negative body image already. And what society tells us over and over as young girls and as women is that sports are not necessarily the space for us, that the way that you look and that the way that you present physically on the outside is far more important than what we are capable of doing. And so looking at that research, part of the program's focus is to create a safe space where girls are able to practice some of these skills related to self-esteem building and confidence building in a place where they can practice that is also not competitive. So Girls on the Run is physical activity based, but it is not competitive. We are not asking them to beat each other in the race. We are asking them to set small goals for themselves and to work towards their own development. So finding a space where girls are able to do that is unique in that most of the time, the messages that are coming to girls and women are that we are pitted against each other, as opposed to a space where we are able to build each other up and encourage each other to move forward. Heather, I know that you are also looking at a lot of this same type of research and why you started out focusing on girls. I'd love to give you a chance to kind of share some information about that.
Yeah, I think it's, there's definitely a lot of data around, again, every country will be slightly different, but if we're trying to understand when we're looking at community development here in the United States or also internationally, the importance of having women who are committed to being part of the process, who have the education to do that, and who have the self-esteem to be able to work with others to improve their communities. We've seen how physical activity has played a huge role. One of the things is also just helping girls stay in school by having them be able to choose, when they become pregnant and when they choose to have children, and not have that happen in the middle of their schooling if that's not what they want. There's a lot of data on that in the United States, just that girls who are active in organized sports are less likely to become pregnant. Also, as you're saying, with the social and emotional learning, there's more than enough data about the importance of self-efficacy through some form of embodied action, also dance, right? But things where we're using our bodies, able to find ways to regulate ourselves and not fall, prey to things that a lot of teenagers fall prey to, but to have a way to answer for that. And then again, coming back to your point about satisfaction with their body type. Again, how do we help girls at this time as they're changing? Our programs were directed at grade 5. I think yours, you said 9-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls?
Third grade, yep, third grade,
even younger. Ours were just kind of starting to move into puberty. But again, how do we in a way, we've been talking a lot about vaccination the last little while, but how do we help children in a way sort of be vaccinated against sort of the weight of patriarchal expectation, right? How do we give those girls that extra confidence and bodily awareness so that as they move into puberty and move into the challenges of high school, that they are equipped to deal with it. So I'd like to kind of take another angle on this question. You're going into different schools. I'm sure there must be some school directors that are like, well, can't you do this also for boys? What are our boys supposed to do? So how do you explain this also to the people who already see the value of your program? Yeah, do you have sort of a way of how you're explaining it again to supervisors who definitely want all of their kids to benefit from something like this? How do you make sure that the schools are prepared to take a program which is single sex?
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, many of the schools and community organizations that do Girls on the Run, that implement Girls on the Run, have come to us. So many times they're coming to us because they are already familiar with what the program is. And as more and more data is available, especially since COVID, I know we're going to talk a little bit about COVID, but the impact of social media, the impact of some of the pressures that young girls are experiencing, they are actually seeking out single sex programming, because I think there are so many opportunities that children have to be in that. I mean, they're in the classroom all day in mixed spaces, and to be able to separate them out and have the opportunity for them to talk about things that are relevant for them. We are definitely seeing an increase in people reaching out to us saying, we have these other programs available, but we keep hearing that we need something that addresses the mental health of young people. We have sports teams, but we need something more than a sports team. So I think fortunately, when we have the conversation with folks who are making those decisions about having a single sex program, they understand because they're seeing it anecdotally. I'd love to also, open it up to the people who are in the group. I know you can't actually verbally share, but if you have experiences with Girls on the Run or other programming that is single sex, or maybe you experienced something that, you got pushback for that, I'd be curious to know what that conversation looked like, because it's unusual actually that we are having that conversation now. I think COVID has accelerated the need for very specific targeted mental health type programming.
No, I can underline that. And then again, I encourage all of you to throw in any questions or any remarks so that we can integrate that in this format. One of the things that I saw with box girls, which again is perhaps an even more masculinated sport, right, with boxing or whatever, was just that we had schools that were like, well, why is this just for girls, right? These are in much less well-resourced areas, but we want something for our boys. Our boys are the ones that are at risk. And again, as many of us who are coming from the sort of feminist side of the street, there's often a very strong battle just to get resources for girls' activities. And that often, in my experience, it's been that people are like, oh, we do sports for youth. But if there's not a particular focus on girls and people who identify as girls, then they just kind of get put under the rug. So it's like the school's like, oh, well, we have soccer programs and we have this, but then you look at the field and there's maybe 3 girls there and 300 boys, and there seems to be no need for change. And I think that's why, again, some of us are always then explaining why we don't have boys directly in our programs. With Girls in the Lead, we of course have many men and younger men who are like supportive of the mission and who are involved in different ways in the organizations, but we're focusing on the needs, emotional and physical and social of these young women and girls and people who understand that you need to have a specific focus, otherwise they get lost, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I'd be very happy to hear from some of you who are coaches or who are representing Girls on the Run sites, just about maybe if parents are asking, well, why can't my son do it? He wants to do a 5K, and how you answer those questions. I'd like to move a little bit out of this space and think about access in general. We know that we live in an area of the country with huge racial disparities. with huge problems with how our public schools are funded and the access that they have to funds. Also the challenges about how nonprofits like yours are funded, or like our community, international community. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about how Girls on the Run thinks about access, thinks about moving into different communities when you, of course, need to be able to cover the expenses of offering such a high quality program. If you could say something about that. And then again, we'd love to hear from some of you who are here on the call to discuss and through the chat that we can make sure that your point of view is heard. But Lisa, please.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, access is one of the pillars of our focus as an organization. It's a huge part of our strategic plan, and really we are operating from that space every day. So who is not accessing this program? Why? And how are we working towards ensuring that they can have access if they would like it? So we have the privilege of working in a very diverse community. So we serve urban, rural, suburban. We have worked in partnership with Washington University to develop tools that we are able to provide sliding scale fees for girls to participate, so that we are breaking down some of the financial barriers to access. We have a very robust development plan where we are working with our community foundations and donors to be able to offset some of the cost of this program. Ideally, this would be something that would be able to be more accessible financially on a wider scale. So as with all, I don't want to speak for all nonprofits, but anyone who has worked in partnership with community and has fundraised to be able to provide those programs in an accessible way. The goal would be that this would be available to all children without those barriers. But one of the other pieces of access that I think is really important to acknowledge is that there is the financial barrier, but also we work in partnership so that folks feel like this is a culturally accessible program as well. So not every community is different. Even communities in the same school district, schools within the same school district, block to block, communities are different. And one of the things that we are really focused on is listening to the people in the community and hearing them and hearing what are those barriers. So maybe the barrier in one community, the block over the barrier is different. And across our community wide, some of the cultural barriers around making this feel like that this is an accessible program, that girls want to participate in it, that the coaches are representative of the girls in the community, that we are training folks to be able to have really important conversations. We have a national coach training that helps coaches be able to navigate hard conversations, including conversations related to trauma and other things that girls are experiencing. I think there's sometimes this perception that Girls on the Run is about just running, and that is not for me. I often hear that from coaches and from girls. Well, it sounds like it would be fun, but that's just not for me. And it's a great opportunity to then be able to say, what doesn't feel right for you? What doesn't fit for you? Because there is a space for everyone at Girls on the Run. And if it is sort of a running barrier, maybe the adults in that community don't feel like that's an accessible thing for them. Let us help you figure out what does work for you so that your girls can have access to this important program. I think a lot of the barriers that you talked about, financial, racial, just different community barriers that each community experiences. I think the key for us is just trying to better understand, and make sure that we are empowering the right adults in that community to show up for her at practice.
Yeah. I'm very happy to see that we have someone coming from kind of an elite girls sports space, Stephanie Gabbard, who was the varsity coach for women's soccer at WashU, and now a performance coach, was putting into the chat that part of the challenge was that as someone leading a girls team, that she was expected to find funding for the boys team too. I'm not sure that many boys sports programs are asked, oh, well, how do you fund something else? So thank you very much for contributing that, Stephanie, because you see the challenge is when you have various forms of pay to play, right? Like obviously there needs to be money to do these programs, but by that nature will make it harder for more poorly resourced schools to take part. But I understand, I think you actually worked with one of my colleagues on like creating a tool. So you're trying to be very intentional about how to price this thing. So you basically have a version of a sliding scale based on what the schools can pay. Can you say something briefly about that?
Sure. Yeah. So we take specific data points related to that community, related to income. So mostly tied to the percentage of children receiving free and reduced lunch at that particular school, graduation rates, and other data points that we input into an algorithm that then generates a more appropriate fee for that school. In addition to that, just because we have a fee for a school at a specific site, that's not going to work for every family. And we understand that. So we offer a very robust scholarship program on top of that sliding fee. Excuse me. So let's say the fee is $25 to participate at a specific school. If that is inaccessible for a family, they are able to access an additional scholarship on top of that. And we work with individual families so that we can ensure that finances are never the reason that she is not able to participate. Additionally, there are other barriers. So there's that fee, but maybe she doesn't have a safe pair of shoes to wear, or she doesn't have an appropriate sports bra, something that is going to be a barrier to her participating. We work with individual sites and families to ensure that those barriers are not getting in the way of her participating. So yes. Great.
So we've got a bunch of questions coming in. Thank you. Keep them coming. Yes. Courtney's working the chat, but do you want to say something briefly about your policy on trans kids or young people who identify as girls? Are they welcome?
Yes, very welcome. I see that Courtney, who is the executive director at Girls on the Run, is on as well. And she answered that question in the chat. But yes, I want to highlight that verbally, that if a child identifies as trans or is even exploring, not totally sure how they want to identify, we are open. We are very open to that and inclusive.
Yeah, and we're also very proud to have you as alumnus. Can you say something a bit about how and you're talking a lot about some rather sophisticated data collection. I want to give a shout out to my colleague, Amy Eiler, who's also listening in. Can you say something about how being at the Brown School kind of helped you think about this job and how to be more strategic with Courtney and your other colleagues thinking about, as you say, where to put resources and how to have the most impact?
Yes, absolutely. And Courtney, feel free to put your input in the chat as well. So we have worked very closely with the Brown School. Well, I'll start by saying being a student at the Brown School really helped open my eyes and provide me with access to people who are focused on the things that I think youth development work really needs to be focused on. Evidence-based programming. I know if you are listening in and you are a student at the Brown School, my assumption is that even 15 years later, we're still really focused on evidence-based programming and how that translates into a really important return on our investment in our community. This program is so well evidenced that we can be very confident that if you are investing in this, there will be a return on that. We are always saying at Girls on the Run, we are hoping that we are helping develop young people, young girls who are going to be our bosses someday. So whether that's our boss at Girls on the Run St. Louis, or in a C-suite in a large company, or the boss of their home, the boss of their own body, that they are in a space where we want to develop young people who feel like they can activate their limitless potential, because they really are limitless. And being at the Brown School sort of helped me see that that's possible. In previous work that I had done, it was also very much related to replicating evidence-based programs and what that means to work really in partnership with community. I think that separates a lot of the work that we do from a lot of youth programming, is that we are really, really committed to working in partnership with community. And so we listen and we do our absolute best to meet folks where we are. On a totally sort of it's not totally separate note, but just the connections at the Brown School. Amy Eiler, who is on this, Dr. Amy Eiler, who is on this webinar, she is on our board of directors, and she has been part of Girls on the Run St. Louis in a variety of different capacities for many years. Having the ability to work with her and her team has given us the opportunity to continue to see that the program makes an impact. We use evaluation, pre and post survey evaluation data every year. We are constantly ensuring that where our resources are going are making an impact, and we're taking that evaluation, making adjustments in how we work in community so that our girls continue to get positive impact. One of the things that we are actually working on right now, and Amy, I'd love for you to pop your thoughts into the chat too. I see that they're coming. It's hard to speak and look at the chat at the same time, but I'm really excited because what we are starting to look at more deeply is we know that the program is making a positive impact on the girl. The girl has a positive impact, and we are seeing that across a lot of domains. What we are also starting to look at now is that how does this program impact the community at large, which means how does the program impact the adults in her life, maybe her siblings, maybe her neighbors? How does it ripple out? There have been some studies done with Amy in the past that have demonstrated that there is a ripple, which then can translate into being a more community-wide impact. But we are getting ready to dive into that a little bit more, and being able to have that connection with the Brown School is very, very wonderful, because it will translate into being able to demonstrate with data that our program is making an impact across the community.
No, this is excellent, and this is what gets all of our students excited about thinking about the policy implications, thinking about the social work opportunities, thinking about the public health opportunities, and how we can justify the spend on this. Maybe just a quick comment. Amy, you're more than welcome to put something in the chat about your thoughts about how we would how that moves forward. Somebody was also asking about how do we justify, with so many things being shown, the problems that came up through COVID, and sort of like the X-ray of our society in a way, showing vulnerability that many of us knew was there, but maybe wasn't quite so blatant to everyone. How do you, the question was sort of like, how do we justify, or how do we argue for funding for physical activity when there's so many other priorities? I'm not sure I take it quite as negatively. But maybe first part of the question, again, some of your adaptations for COVID. And then secondly, are you finding that people are even clearer about the need for programs like Girls on the Run and the social emotional learning and the physical activity? Or are you finding, again, like many nonprofits, okay, we can't do anything right now because we're busy spending money on X? How was your COVID fundraising and operational experience?
Yes, it's a very fair, important question. I will very confidently say that the urgency and the relevancy for Girls on the Run and programs like Girls on the Run has never been greater. We, as I'm sure many of you are tapped into, but I mean, we are in a youth mental health crisis in our country right now. We were moving in that direction pre-COVID, and COVID accelerated and exacerbated what was already sort of underneath the surface. The youth emergency room visits for mental health related issues, and there is so much data coming quickly around the impact of being isolated and virtual for so long, and also the fear and anxiety that has come from are girls losing loved ones during a global pandemic? And then also, how do you navigate this new world? It is so urgent and so relevant. And I think that's part of what sets Girls on the Run apart from other types of programs, is that we are providing the mental health support and the physical activity. Amy Eiler can speak much more eloquently around the physical activity decreases that we have seen across the country and in our community during COVID. But combining the physical and the mental health has been very wildly helpful for so many folks during this really challenging time. I think it's also people who were maybe on the fence about their capacity to invest resources or make sure that this is a priority have now said, we cannot wait any longer. This is essential to our ability to meet families and girls where they are. I'm really proud to also say that during COVID, we never stopped programming. So we were able to adapt and flex to a virtual format. And then also we are continuing to adapt and flex in a way that allows different communities who have different rules and regulations and fears and hopes to continue to deliver the program effectively. I do have to just share this one quick story that right when COVID started, we transitioned from being in person to being fully virtual, and girls were continuing to commit to doing their program in the spring of 2020, which was so inspirational to so many of us. And we had a little girl who, to complete her 5K, chose to run around her house 120 times. She did 120 laps around her house to complete her 5K. And it was one of those things that felt like, if she can do that, what else can she do? And how else can we show up for her? It was just such a demonstration of how important this is. And we have continued to see that over the last 2 years. We are in the process of building back our programming to be as robust and full as it was in terms of the numbers being served, but people are excited. They are excited to be back. They are willing to be flexible because the urgency is so important, is so high.
That's true. And it's definitely true here in our community, and even more so around the world, where we have even more precarious access to education and the like. I'm just going to ask, go one more forward. I see now on the screen, it's a little bit small, but there's a long list of different resources that you guys are welcome to access for free on Girls in the Lead. All of the different discussion points that Lisa and I have been getting into around gender identity, around impact measurement, around program design, around working girls programs, working with young men's programs. Also some of my work around social entrepreneurship and fundraising, they're all here and available. This is sort of a crowdsourced set of tools and little online classes before we knew how to do these in like 4D to help introduce you to some of the themes. I'm happy to see, Lisa, there's people here from the courts, there's people here from the Boys and Girls Clubs, there's lots of students, and this is a very exciting space to explore more on. We've got a great example with Girls on the Run here about how this can work, and I encourage you guys to take the opportunity to take a look at our platform and see if there's other themes that you're interested in and learning in a more of an international context as well, because physical activity and working on physical and mental health together has been something that's been a big part of achieving our goals in girls' education, achieving our goals in fighting hunger and poverty, sort of with the international lens on. So I encourage all of you who took some value from this webinar to also consider taking a look at some of the international context. Okay, so we're going to move towards ending here and just explain some of the ways that you can be involved. Maybe Lisa, if you want to say briefly, what are some of the opportunities if people want to connect with you, and what are some of the ways? So obviously they can become a site for Girls on the Run, but what are maybe some of the other opportunities for some of the students on the calls or ways that they can interact with you?
Sure. I would love to invite all of you, no matter who you are or what your background is, to join us at the 5K, which is on May 14th in Forest Park. We have a lot of volunteer needs, and you can also participate, run or walk. It is one of the most joyful days of the year. It is an opportunity to see our community from across those 23 counties come together and reach a big goal. They have been working towards this goal for the whole season, and they get that sense of accomplishment and confidence by crossing that finish line. Nobody can take that away from them. And we would love to invite you there. You can register for the 5K as a volunteer or a participant on our website, which I know will get thrown into the chat. We have a lot of opportunities. If you are interested in being a longer term volunteer, all of our programming is delivered by coaches who are volunteers. So we train you, we support you. If you'd like to learn more about that, I would love to connect with you. You can look at our website. You can also reach out to me directly, which I know my contact information will be provided. And then also just an investment. If you want to sponsor a team, if you want to make an investment, a financial investment in our community, knowing that it will have a return, I'd love to talk with you about that. And we have leadership opportunities as well. So we have a young professionals board, we have a board of directors, where you get a chance to see the organization much more intimately and help guide the direction and the impact in our community. So we are always very excited to connect with new folks. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Even if you're not sure where you might fit in, I'd love to have that conversation with you.
Great. We've had lots of Brown School students who've benefited a lot from their practicum opportunities, are also working with Dr. Amy Eiler's team on the evaluation. So I encourage you for that. I'd also like to point out that those of you who are interested in sort of in the social work tech for good space and building platforms, we are going through a renewal process with the Girls in the Lead website and building new online courses for our participants, mainly in sub-Saharan Africa and India. But all of you who are interested in global health, in international social work, I encourage you to reach out. There's lots of different ways to be involved. Both, for credit or as a volunteer or who knows what. Pitch me something good if you're interested in this theme and how it can be a piece of your further professional development. So at this point, I'd like to thank very much all of you for your great questions and interactions, and for supporting the great work of Girls on the Run, or being curious about how you may be able to fold it in. Open Classroom is an opportunity for us at the university to try and share great ideas, share some of the research we're doing with a wider community, and to make it as relevant as possible. So we welcome very much your feedback and ideas also for future events. But let me thank Ariel and Maya for supporting the development of the webinar, and Lisa as our valued guest, and all of you for coming. I hope that we continue to keep in conversation. And with that, back to you, Janet.
Thanks so much, Heather. And Lisa, thank you. This content has been really inspirational. I can say I've been a coach and a running companion for a girl doing a 5K. It is a joyful experience. So whatever your relationship to young women now, it's a great opportunity to get involved if you can. To our audience, thank you so much for staying so engaged with us, for your interest in this topic. We hope you found this time valuable, and we're grateful that you spent it with us. And we hope to see you again at another Open Classroom very soon. So much still coming up this spring. With that, we're going to wish you a happy, healthy, and safe rest of your day, and hope to see you again very soon. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.